Welcome to the Bong Toi Trong Dem channel. The story you are about to hear is entirely fictional, created solely for the purpose of horror storytelling. All characters, locations, and events are not real. But if, while listening, you feel an unsettling sense of familiarity, then perhaps your memory is playing a dangerous game of its own. My name is Minh. I'm 36 years old, living alone in a small rented room in Saigon, and I cannot sleep whenever it rains. Not because of the noise, not because of the dampness, but because every time rain hits the corrugated metal roof, older sounds begin to echo in my head. Sounds far more ancient, sounds buried for more than 20 years, yet never truly gone. Tonight is no different. The rain started close to 11. At first, it was just a few scattered drops tapping lightly. Then it quickly turned into a thick curtain of water pouring relentlessly onto the roof. No thunder, no strong wind, just rain, the kind of rain that falls steadily and endlessly, as if it knows I'm lying still, eyes wide open in the dark. The musty smell from the old wall spread through the room, mixing with the rusty scent of the window frame. I pulled the blanket higher, but the cold still crept along my spine. Not the cold of the weather, but the cold of memories being awakened. I once believed that growing up, leaving my hometown, and living in a crowded city would make those old events fade away. But no, time only pushed them deeper, waiting patiently for the right moment to surface. And rain is always that moment. I was born and raised in Saigon, but my childhood was tied to a rural area in Đồng Tháp. Several times a year, my parents would take me to visit Uncle Ba, my father's younger brother. He lived alone on a riverside plot of land, surrounded by coconut trees, fish ponds, duck pens, pig sheds, a few goats, and chickens that ran wildly across the yard. As a child, I loved going to the countryside. There were no car engines, no tall buildings, only the smell of fresh mud, wet grass, and kitchen smoke clinging to clothes. At night, the garden was pitch black, filled only with the chirping of insects and the gentle sound of water lapping against the riverbank. Uncle Ba was a tall man, sun-darkened skin, hands always rough and scarred with old cuts. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his voice was deep and steady, giving me a strange sense of safety. To me back then, he seemed like the kind of person nothing in the world could scare. He had a dog named Vang, a local mutt with dark yellow fur, black eyes, and sharp instincts. Every time I visited, it would stick close to me, lying right at my feet whenever I sat down, as if afraid I might disappear. Afternoons in the countryside passed slowly. I often sat on the front steps, watching Uncle Ba mend fishing nets or fix the duck pens. The smell of sweat mixed with mud and soil, pungent, yet strangely familiar. Rain is a good thing. Minh. His voice was low and even, eyes fixed on the rain-soaked yard. It masks the smell of blood. Predators won't find newborn animals. At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. I just nodded, trusting him completely. To me, everything Uncle Ba said was right. Until one day. The day it rained from morning until night. That day, my father took me to the countryside on his motorbike. The red dirt road was slippery, the tires sinking deep into the mud. Rain lashed my face, stinging my skin, the smell of wet earth filling my nose. When we stopped at the gate, I jumped off first, loudly calling out Uncle Ba and Vang's names like always. There was no answer. The gate was open, but the house was locked. My heart sank slightly, an uneasy feeling creeping into my mind. Uncle Ba never locked the door when he was home. I froze, looking around the garden, unnaturally silent. No chickens, no ducks, not even a dog barking. Then, from behind the house, a dry, Heavy sound echoed. Bang! Like something extremely heavy slamming against metal. Before I could react, Uncle Ba appeared from the coconut grove. His face pale under the gray rain. His eyes were nothing like usual, strained, bloodshot, like someone who had seen something he was never meant to see. He grabbed my shoulders tightly. His hands trembled just slightly, but enough for me to feel it. Go inside, now. His voice forced low, breath heavy. Lock the door, don't come out, do you hear me? Before I could ask anything, he shoved me inside. The door slammed shut behind me, the lock clicking sharply, blending with the rain that was falling harder by the second. And that was the first moment in my life when I clearly felt that something outside did not belong to this world. The rain in the yard kept falling, steady and patient, as if it were hiding something truly horrifying. And I still didn't know then that this rain had only just begun. I continue my story. After Uncle Ba shoved me inside and locked the door, I stood frozen in the pitch-dark kitchen. The power had gone out at some point, leaving only a dull gray light filtering in through the small window. The rain fell heavily, pounding against the metal roof in a relentless rhythm, steady enough to make my head ache. The musty smell inside the house suddenly grew stronger than usual. The scent of old wood, a long unused wood stove, mixed with a strange, fishy stench, like river water that had overflowed and stagnated in a pond for days. I swallowed hard, my heart beating faster with every second. Vang didn't follow Uncle Ba like it usually did. It stood right behind me, its fur bristling, a low growl rumbling in its throat. I crouched down and placed a hand on its head, but my hand was shaking so badly I couldn't keep it still. Easy, it's okay. My voice was tiny, hoarse with fear. Maybe Uncle just has something to take care of. I wasn't sure if I was comforting Vang or myself. From the kitchen window, I could see part of the backyard. The duck pen sat there, unnaturally still. No familiar quacking that usually followed the rain, only rainwater flowing in streams, dragging faint red streaks across the muddy ground. At that moment, I still didn't understand how there could be so much blood. I heard metal clanging outside, the sound of a machete hitting the ground, then heavy footsteps, sinking deep into the mud. Uncle Ba was walking around the house. I knew those footsteps. I had heard them throughout my childhood. But something was different. The steps were no longer steady. Sometimes they sounded like they were dragging. Sometimes they sounded like there was more than one person. I pressed my ear against the wooden door, straining to listen. The rain was so loud it nearly swallowed every other sound. But within that chaos, I caught something deeply wrong. A sound unlike any animal I had ever known. It sounded like breathing, but not rhythmic, not hurried. Slow, deep, heavy, as if something enormous was forcing air into lungs that didn't truly belong to it. A shiver ran through me. I stepped back and accidentally bumped into a wooden cabinet behind me. The noise was small, but in that unnaturally quiet space, it echoed far too clearly. Immediately, the breathing outside stopped. Everything went dead silent. No rain, no wind, no footsteps. Only the pounding of my own heart in my chest. Min. A voice came from outside. Hoarse, no longer steady like before. Don't come out, listen to me. I recognized Uncle Ba's voice. But it was wrong. As if each word was being dragged out of a throat that was raw and burning. Yes? I replied, my lips dry. I'm inside. A long pause followed, no response, only the foul smell in the air growing thicker, so strong it made my stomach churn. Then another voice spoke. Unclear. Unformed. like someone trying to imitate human speech without knowing how. I couldn't understand the words, only feel that it was very close. Vang growled, no longer quietly. It backed into my legs, its whole body trembling, claws scraping lightly against the tile. Quiet. Uncle Ba's voice snapped, urgent, almost commanding. Lie down. Vang's growl died instantly, replaced by a soft whimper. I didn't dare look down, but I knew how terrified it was. Then I heard the front door open. The rain crashed down again like a waterfall. Through the crack of the kitchen door, I saw Uncle Ba standing in the yard. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his body. In his hand was a machete, its blade reflecting the faint gray light from the sky. But his eyes weren't on the yard. He was staring at a spot behind the duck pen, a spot I couldn't see clearly from where I stood. He raised his homemade shotgun, his hands trembling just slightly. I know you're there. His voice dropped low, tight as a drawn wire. Go away, I won't let you take it. I held my breath. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what you was. Then I saw the darkness behind the duck pen move. At first, it was just a patch of black, thicker than the rest. Then it began to rise, as if standing up from a crawling position. Taller than Uncle Ba. Very slowly. I couldn't make out its full shape. I only saw abnormally long arms emerging from the darkness, sweeping lightly through the air, as if searching. Each time an arm brushed against something, I heard a faint scraping sound that made my skin crawl, like fingernails dragging across rotten wood. Uncle Ba stepped back. Min, listen to me. His voice trembled, though he tried to stay calm. If anything happens, don't come out. Understand? I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could make a sound, the shadow suddenly moved faster. One arm shot forward, impossibly long, and clamped onto Uncle Ba's shoulder. He screamed, a scream half devoured by the rain. Run! His voice broke in panic. Don't look, don't. The sentence was cut short. I saw Uncle Ba lifted off the ground, his legs kicking wildly in the air. The machete slipped from his hand and stabbed into the mud. The shotgun slid away, tumbling across the ground. I stood there, frozen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched. The shadow dragged Uncle Ba behind the duck pen. In seconds, both of them vanished into the curtain of heavy rain. Silence returned. A silence so terrifying I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I don't remember how long I stood there, only that my legs felt like jelly. Unable to move, Vang tugged lightly at my pant leg, its eyes wide, wet with terror. Then, there was a knock. Tap, tap. Not on the front door, but on the kitchen window. I turned my head very slowly, every muscle stiff as stone. Outside, the darkness stood right against the window frame. This time, I could see it more clearly. Unnaturally broad shoulders, a hunched back. On that dark body hung too many arms, dangling limply, the claws curved inward, caked with mud and something darker. One arm lifted and tapped gently on the glass. Tap. I heard a sound rise from its throat. Not laughter, but something like a person learning how to laugh. A clumsy, twisted imitation. I stepped back, the foul stench hitting my nose, making me gag. And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. It wasn't entering the house. Not because it couldn't, but because it didn't need to. It only needed me to see it. Outside, the rain kept falling. And in my mind, a cold thought surfaced, terrifyingly clear. If it didn't come in tonight, that meant it wasn't finished yet. And I could feel it. That thing would return. Very soon. After that knock, I don't remember how long I stood there, completely motionless. I only know that my legs felt ice cold, as if all the blood had drained straight into the ground. The kitchen window was blurred with rainwater and the breath of whatever stood outside. On the glass, thin streams of water slid downward, dragging with them a warped reflection of that tall, distorted shape. Vang pressed even closer against my legs. It no longer growled. It no longer whimpered. It only breathed rapidly, short, shallow breaths, as if breathing any louder would make a sound it wasn't supposed to make. Tap. Another knock. This one was lighter, almost patient. I bit down hard on my lip, fighting the urge to cry. In my head, every warning Uncle Ba had ever given me spun wildly, crashing into one another, but none of them told me what to do now. The shadow outside tilted its head. That movement sent goosebumps racing across my skin. It wasn't the way a human tilts their head. It was more like a heavy object hanging from a loose string, slowly sagging to one side. Then I heard a voice. Unclear. Incomplete. As if something were forcing its throat to produce sound without understanding how speech worked. Rain. The voice was hoarse, broken, stretched out, like wind slipping through the cracks of rotten wood. I stepped back again, my spine hitting the kitchen table. The cold from the wood seeped through my shirt, straight into my skin. Uncle. I blurted out, my voice trembling so badly I barely recognized it. Uncle Ba. There was no answer. Only the rain. And the foul stench in the air grew thicker, so overpowering it made my throat tighten. An arm outside the window twitched. Not one, but two, then three arms slowly crawled up onto the glass. Claws scraped lightly, producing a shrill, grating sound that made me want to cover my ears. I turned and ran. I didn't dare look back. I sprinted into Uncle Ba's bedroom, slammed the door shut, and dove straight under the bed. No thinking, no hesitation. I only knew it was the lowest, darkest, most enclosed place I could hide. Under the bed, the musty smell was suffocating. Dirt, pesticide, long rotten wood left untouched for years. I curled into myself, pulling Vang tightly against my chest, clamping a hand over my mouth. Outside, the knocking stopped. Silence. A silence that lasted so long I became afraid of how loud my own heartbeat was. Then there were footsteps. No longer dragging like before, but a soft, scraping sound, like fingernails scratching across tile. I held my breath, each second stretched into an eternity. Cold sweat poured down my spine even though the air beneath the bed was freezing. The bedroom door creaked, opened. Gray light from outside spilled in, casting a long, twisted shadow across the floor, one with no fixed shape. It quivered, expanding and contracting, as if it had too many parts and nowhere to place them. I saw legs. Not two, but many overlapping limbs, bent the wrong way, sinking into the wet dirt dragged in from outside. Vang began to shake violently. I felt every small spasm in its chest. I clutched it tighter, tears streaming down my face without me realizing it. Here, the voice echoed inside the room. This time, it was clearer. And the clearer it was, the more wrong it sounded. It didn't come from a single direction. It was as if the entire room was speaking to me. The shadow bent down. Very slowly. I saw the excess arms dangling, their claws touching the floor, carving faint lines as they dragged. One arm reached deep under the bed, stopping less than a foot from my face. The stench slammed into my nose, so strong I nearly vomited out loud. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Don't cry. Don't scream. Don't let it know. The arm froze, hovered, then withdrew. I didn't understand why. But I knew one thing for certain, it knew I was there. It was just choosing the moment. Outside, the rain began to fade. It didn't stop completely, only softened, as if the storm were retreating to reveal what it had been hiding all along. After a while, I heard loud noises from the yard. Metal slamming hard. Tin sheets bending. Something heavy being dragged across the ground. Then everything went quiet. I don't know if I fainted or simply blacked out from fear. I only remember waking to dim daylight. Weak sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating the filthy floor. The rain had stopped. I crawled out from under the bed, my entire body aching as if I'd been beaten. Vang was still alive, but it didn't stand. It lay there, eyes wide open, breathing faintly. I ran outside. The duck pen had been destroyed from the inside. Tin panels twisted and folded upward, as if bent by an unimaginable force. There were no duck bodies, no feathers, no blood. The pig pen was empty. The goat pen was empty. The entire garden looked as if it had been swept clean in a single night. I called out for Uncle Ba, my voice hoarse, breaking into the empty space. No one answered, only the sound of insects slowly returning, as if nothing had happened the night before. By noon, my parents and the police arrived. They asked me many questions. I told them everything, from beginning to end, but when I saw their eyes, I knew no one believed me. The kid was probably terrified and imagined it. A voice said, trying to reassure but filled with doubt. The rain was heavy. The water must have washed everything away. They found drag marks around the yard. They photographed the destroyed pens. But they didn't find Uncle Ba. They didn't find Vang. They didn't find anything that proved the existence of that shadow. Uncle Ba was declared missing. The case was closed. And I carried it with me for the rest of my life. Now, sitting alone in a rented room in Saigon, listening to rain tapping against the metal roof, I still remember its eyes clearly. Not angry, not hungry, but pleased, as if it had gotten exactly what it wanted from the very beginning. It didn't kill me. It let me live, so I would remember. And when the first seasonal rain begins to fall over this city, I suddenly realize something that sends ice down my spine. If that thing truly left back then why is it that even now, every time it rains, I still feel as if something is standing right behind me? I left Đồng Tháp after that night like a walking corpse. The adults said I had a high fever, that I was delirious, that a child's mind was prone to imagination. I stayed silent, not because I didn't want to speak, but because I knew there are things that grow stronger the more they are spoken aloud. And I was afraid to name it. The years that followed passed slowly. I grew up, went to college, and eventually stayed in Saigon. I learned to live with traffic noise, with neon lights, with crowds. I believed I had left that riverside garden and that rain-filled night far behind me. But every time it rained, my body betrayed me, my heart raced, my ears strained, my nose caught a faint, sickening scent, like river water rising. Tonight, the rain has come again. I'm sitting at my desk, a yellow lamp casting light onto the page. The rain taps steadily against the metal roof like a measured countdown. I try to focus, but the words I type warp and slip away from my thoughts. I stand up and open the window for air. Damp wind rushes in, carrying the smell of city rain. No mud, no grass, yet something old and heavy clings to it. Then I hear a knock. Not from the roof. Not from the door. From the wall on my left. Tap. I freeze. My heartbeat skips. I press my ear to the wall. Listening. The rain blankets everything. I tell myself I'm imagining it. Tap. Clearer this time. I step back, eyes fixed on the stained wall. This old rental room has cracks, patches of mold. People say old houses make noises when it rains. Wood expands, metal contracts. Everything has an explanation. Except for the fact that I can smell it. Very faint, like stirred up mud. Calm down. I whisper to myself, my throat dry and raw. It's just rain. My phone vibrates on the desk. A message from an unknown number. Are you Minh? I stare at the screen. An unfamiliar number. A provincial area code. I don't reply immediately. My heart beats faster. But a part of me, the stupidest part, is curious. Yes. Who is this? 3 dots appear, disappear. Then the message comes. My name is Hung. I'm with Tan Lap Commune Police. This may sound strange, but do you remember your Uncle Ba's case back then? I drop into the chair. The rain outside seems heavier. What's going on? A long pause. I think there will be no reply. Then, we've found something related to the old farm. My chest tightens. I swallow hard. My hands shaking so much I mistype twice. What is it? It might be better if you come back. I look out the window. Rain falls thickly. Streetlights blurring. A cold thought slithers through my mind. I spent more than 20 years running. And maybe I never ran far enough. The night bus back to Đồng Tháp leaves at 3 in the morning. I sit alone in the last row. Headphones on but no music playing. I need to hear everything. The bus rolls through flooded roads. Rain streaks across the glass, forming long trails, exactly like the ones I saw on the kitchen window that night. When the bus stops at the small station, dawn is just breaking. The rain has eased, leaving damp air hanging low. The smell of wet earth hits my nose the moment I step down. This smell, I never forgot it. Hung picks me up on an old motorbike. He's younger than I expected. His face tense, eyes constantly scanning around. Mr. Minh, he says quietly, cautiously. I'm sorry to call you so suddenly, but what we found, it isn't normal. We ride along the dirt road leading to the old garden. The scenery on both sides is painfully familiar. The coconut grove is still there, though many trees have been cut down. The riverbank has eroded, the water murky. Uncle Ba's farm is now nothing but a foundation and a few rusted pen frames. We were digging drainage ditches, Hung says, avoiding my eyes, gripping the handlebars. After last week's heavy rain, the bike stops. I step down, my legs heavy. The air here is damp and cold despite the sunlight. It feels like stepping into a sealed room, where my own breathing sounds too loud. Hung leads me to a pit covered with a tarp. 2 others stand nearby, keeping their distance, faces tight. Hung pulls the tarp away. I see a bent piece of metal. A machete. Rusty, but unmistakable. We also found this. Hung's voice goes hoarse, his hand trembling slightly. He hands me a plastic bag. Inside is an old, frayed piece of fabric, crusted with dried mud. I recognize it instantly. Uncle Ba's shirt. I used to grab this very hem when I followed him into the garden. It was buried deep, Hung says, his expression complicated, refusing to meet my eyes. As if it had been dragged down. A ringing fills my ears. The world tilts. I grab a wooden stake beside me to keep from falling. Is that all? My voice is rough, barely a whisper. Hung shakes his head. There were marks. He inhales deeply, as if bracing himself. Claw marks. A lot of them. Not human, not animal either. I close my eyes. In the darkness behind my lids, I see long arms, claws scraping glass. I hear heavy, deliberate breathing. Mr. Minh. Hung calls softly, worried. Are you okay? I open my eyes and stare at the ruined garden. The wind rustles through dry palm leaves. A faint, sickening smell drifts by. Do you smell that? I ask quietly, my throat dry. That smell. Hung frowns and sniffs the air. Just wet soil, he says. I nod, but cold spreads inside me. I know I'm not wrong. The smell is back, and when I look down at the ground around the pit, I see faint drag marks leading toward the river. Like traces of something that climbed out. Before I leave, Hung grips my hand tightly. Go back to Saigon. His voice trembles, eyes avoiding mine. Don't come back here again. I don't answer. On the way back, rain begins to fall lightly. The bus crosses a bridge, muddy river water churning below. I look down, and for a brief moment, I see the surface ripple, as if something beneath it has shifted. That night, I return to my rented room. I lock the door, draw the curtains, turn on every light. The rain outside grows heavier. I sit in the brightly lit room, telling myself I'm safe. Then I hear a knock. Not from the wall. Not from the window. From the ceiling. Tap. Very soft. As if someone is checking whether I still remember. And in that moment, I realize something that freezes my heart. If the traces have risen with the rain, if the stench has returned, then maybe it never left that land at all. Maybe it's just following me home. After the knock on the ceiling that night, I didn't dare sleep. I sat with my back against the wall, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling stained with old watermarks. The light was still on, but it no longer made me feel safe. It only exposed everything too clearly, every crack, every peeling patch of paint, every warped shadow that refused to stay still. The rain grew heavier. I counted each drop. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm was so steady that it began to feel familiar. Familiar, as if I had once sat beneath this same rain for a very long time. Somewhere else, inside a smaller body. Tap. The knock came again from the ceiling. This time, it was clearer. I jumped to my feet, my heart pounding so hard it made me dizzy. I tilted my head upward, holding my breath, listening. No footsteps, no scratching, only the rain, and a very faint sound, like something lightly touching a wooden surface from above. Someone. I called out, my voice hoarse, my throat burning dry. Who's up there? I knew the question was stupid. This rental room had only one floor. Above the ceiling was corrugated metal. Then empty darkness where no one could stand. I had checked before. I knew that. There was no reply. But the stench returned. This time, it was stronger than the night before. No longer vague. It was exactly like stirred up mud mixed with the smell of old metal. I covered my nose, but the scent didn't seem to come from the air, it came from memory. 2 knocks in quick succession. As if whatever was up there was testing my reaction. I stepped back, my spine hitting the desk. Papers slid to the floor with a soft rustling sound, small, but enough to make me flinch violently. I bent down to pick them up, and in that moment, I saw my shadow stretching long across the floor. But beside my shadow, there was another one. Taller. Misshapen. I snapped my head up. There was no one there. Just the light trembling slightly from the wind and rain outside. I told myself I was too tense. The trip back to my hometown had stirred everything up. I needed sleep. I needed rest. I needed logic to regain control. I turned off most of the lights, leaving only a weak yellow glow in the bedroom. I lay down, pulling the blanket up high, my eyes never leaving the ceiling. The steady rain lulled me into a drifting state, half awake, half asleep. Then I dreamed. I was standing in Uncle Ba's old garden. Rain poured down relentlessly. The pens were empty. The river had risen, spilling over its banks, black and thick. I saw long drag marks on the ground, leading straight into the water. A voice called out. Min. Low, drawn out, painfully familiar. Yes? I answered in the dream, my chest tightening. Uncle Ba, is that you? No one answered. Instead, the river's surface began to ripple. Circles spread outward, and then a black arm emerged. Claws curved inward, dragging up mud and weeds. Then a second arm, a third. I tried to step back, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Look at me, the voice said, hoarse, as if coming from beneath the water. Look closely. I woke up screaming. The room was pitch black. The light had gone out at some point. The rain was still falling. But something was different. The air felt heavy, making it hard to breathe. I sat up abruptly, cold sweat soaking my back, my shirt clinging to my skin. And then I heard water. Not rain, but dripping. I looked around. The floor was dry. The walls were dry, but the ceiling, a dark streak was seeping down, forming a droplet. I stood up and stepped closer. The droplet fell right in front of my toes. It was darker than normal. I crouched and touched it lightly. The stench hit me violently. No, I whispered, my voice shaking. That's not possible. A knock sounded directly above my head. This time, it wasn't gentle. I stumbled backward, slipped, and fell onto the floor. The ceiling trembled. A thin crack appeared, spreading like a spider web. From that crack, darkness oozed out, thick like liquid. And then, a claw slipped through. Just a little, but enough for me to recognize that familiar shape. Do you remember me? The voice whispered, right above me, dragging out every word. I remember you so well. I crawled backward, my limbs shaking, my mind empty. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt crushed shut. I looked around for an escape, anything to get me out of this room. The door. I lunged for it and twisted the handle. It wouldn't open. I slammed against it, pounding wildly. Open it. My voice broke in panic. Is anyone there? No answer. Behind me, the ceiling cracked loudly. The fissure widened. A mass of darkness spilled downward. Long arms emerging one by one, swaying gently in the air, as if testing the distance to me. The stench was so strong it made me gag. Please, I sobbed, tears streaming down my face. Don't come any closer. Silence followed. Then the voice spoke again, lower this time, almost a whisper, carrying an emotion I couldn't quite name. I didn't kill you. The voice sank deep, slow and deliberate. I kept you. Kept me, for what? The question hadn't fully formed in my mind when my phone rang, sharp and piercing. The sound tore through the space, freezing everything in place. I flinched and spun around. The room flooded with light. The ceiling was intact. No cracks, no shadows, no stench. My phone buzzed violently on the desk. A new message from Hung. Mr. Min, the rain caused more erosion along the river. My hands trembled as I opened it. We found more traces, not at the farm. I swallowed hard. Where? The three dots lingered for a long time. Then the reply came, short and cold. Near where you live. I looked up at the ceiling again. Outside, the rain fell steadily, patiently. A feeling rose in my chest, clear and terrifying. If it had crawled along the water, if its traces had surfaced in the city, then maybe it was no longer bound to that old land. Maybe I was where it wanted to return. When I turned off my phone, under the weak yellow light, I saw my shadow stretch across the floor. This time, there wasn't just one. After Hung's message, I didn't sleep again. I sat on the bed until dawn crept close. My back pressed to the wall, my eyes never leaving the ceiling for even a second. The rain gradually softened, replaced by distant morning traffic. But in my head that voice kept echoing, drawn out, damp, as if it had crawled up from the riverbed. I kept you. I knew I couldn't run anymore. It had followed me here, literally, clinging to memory, to the guilt I'd buried for years. If I kept running, I'd only drag others into the same cycle. I called Hung back. Where are you right now? My voice was hoarse, forcing calm. Stop looking. Listen to me first. Hung was silent for a few seconds. What are you planning to do? His voice dropped, tense. That thing, it's not human. I know. I exhaled slowly. But some things can only be ended by the one who lived through them. I ended the call, pulled on a raincoat, and left the room while dawn was still gray. The riverside road was soaked. Chunks of mud collapsed along the edge. The familiar damp stench hit my nose the moment I stepped down. The same smell as that final night long ago. I stopped at the darkest stretch of the river, where the water slowed, deep and black. The surface was unnaturally still. As if waiting, I could feel unseen eyes following every breath I took. I'm here, I said softly, my voice shaking but steady. What do you want? Say it. The water rippled. Circles spread outward, slow, patient. A black arm rose from the surface. Then a shoulder. The familiar shape emerged through the thin rain. Not as monstrous as in my dreams, but enough to tighten my chest. So you finally came back. The voice rasped, mixed with the sound of water. I thought you'd forgotten. I didn't forget. I swallowed, my eyes burning. I was just a coward. A long silence followed. The river crept higher, cold water touching the tips of my shoes. I didn't step back. For the first time in years, I stood my ground. That night, I said, each word heavy. I heard you calling. The shadow tilted its head slightly, as if listening. But I was scared. My voice cracked. I was afraid of being dragged down too, so I ran. The rain intensified. The face twisted, whether from water or sturdy motion. I couldn't tell. I didn't need you to save me. The voice lowered, no longer angry. I needed you to look. Look at what? I asked, my heart hammering. The shadow raised its hand. The water before me suddenly turned unnaturally clear. I saw that night again. The river swelling, the sudden flood. I saw myself standing on the bank. Saw a hand reaching out. Saw eyes filled with desperate pleading. And I saw myself turning away. I collapsed to my knees. Rainwater mixing with tears. I'm sorry. I choked out, my voice breaking. I should have turned back. A cold current touched my shoulder, not gripping, not pulling, just resting there, heavy, like a real hand. I died. The voice said, exhausted. But I was trapped, because you never dared to remember me the right way. I lifted my head. I'm here now, I said, trembling but firm. I remember, and I take responsibility. The shadow looked at me for a long time. Then, slowly, its form began to dissolve. No claws, no elongated arms, only a faint human shape standing in the water. That's enough. The voice softened, like wind brushing across the river's surface. At last, I can go. The water grew still. The shadow vanished completely, leaving the river ordinary once more, as if nothing had ever happened. The rain eased to a stop. No stench remained, no feeling of being watched. I sat by the river for a long time, until daylight fully arrived. In the days that followed, Everything returned to normal. No more knocking on the ceiling. No more water-soaked dreams. Hung told me the strange traces had disappeared. The riverbanks were reinforced. There were no more landslides. I moved out of that rental room and into a new place, higher, brighter, filled with sunlight. On my first night there, I slept straight through until morning, without a single nightmare. But before drifting off, I still felt as if someone stood far away, watching me one last time. No resentment, no blame, only relief. And even though this is a good ending, I want to remind you of one thing. Some things do not disappear because they are chased away. They only leave when they are faced directly and called by their true name. If one night you hear a very soft knock on your ceiling, take a moment to remember, have you ever turned your back on someone in the dark? Before we end, please remember that the entire story you've just heard is completely fictional. If you found the story compelling and unsettling, please like and subscribe to the Bong Toi Trong Dem channel to continue joining us for more chilling tales. Thank you for listening. Sleep well.